They make millions, hundreds of millions of dollars by selling accessories, basically. Guns, clothing, and there's no real world value, but people love to spend money on this kind of thing. And so you're basically taking a mechanism that already exists in gaming today and just adding more value to it. So both as a game developer, where you can bridge that gap between digital value and real world value, and for the gamer, giving them something that they can take from in-game and potentially sell it somewhere else, you're driving a lot of value to your game and also to the ecosystem. And it's because it's something that already exists, you don't have to convince gamers to buy something because they're already doing it. And it's not something that you have to educate them on because, again, it's a mechanism that they're already familiar with. So providing value to them beyond the game is something that's a really, really easy sell for you as a developer. So revenue from secondary sales. Right now, there is a secondary market that exists in gaming. If you think about op skins, some of the other secondary markets, you can basically sell your in-game items or sell access to your account, sell weapons and things like that. But you as a game developer, you don't get any of that funds. But what you can do if you're a blockchain game is that you can actually have a marketplace within your own app to buy and sell, or sorry, to allow users to buy and sell those NFTs, and you can take a portion. So with OpenSea, for example, they have a marketplace API where you can actually install it on your site or within your game, and it's really easy to implement, and you can add a fee to each transaction that happens so that you can get a cut of that. So right now, as a game developer, you're not capturing any of that value, but with a blockchain game and an API access, you can basically capture some of that value back. Yeah, so we already touched on this. It's something that's already familiar to gamers. They already understand the concept, and this is just providing more value beyond the game.
One question before, you were saying about the platform, e-commerce, marketplace.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a marketplace where we have people that are just putting down their guns, and on the other side, we have other people that is going to buy them. Then why they should go to my marketplace?
So if
instead of using already what it is in the market.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So if you're the game developer, you probably have a lot more trust and recognition with your users because you're the official one. They'll probably come to you. Obviously, there are other marketplaces that exist, and so you have to take into account how much they're selling those NFTs for. But because it's a marketplace, you don't really control the prices, and so you're just creating a place where people can come and transact. But if they're going to do it anyway on someone else's platform, why don't you create the infrastructure so that you can capture some of that value? Because if you're the game developer, it makes more sense for you to have a place where your users can come because it's more convenient for them versus them going on to a third-party platform to do that. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this one is actually really interesting. I touched on it before, but with CryptoKitties and blockchain cuties, I think that the people who play these games are not your traditional gamers. So these are people who really like to collect things. They might, if you think about gaming as a whole, generally it's mostly male dominated, but with blockchain cuties and CryptoKitties, they appeal to a broader audience. So they could appeal to kids who really like the artwork or like collecting pets. They could appeal to females who really love the artwork and how cute it is. So you just really expand the market beyond the traditional typical market. And it becomes a way for people to basically interact with each other. So maybe I really like a CryptoKitty or a blockchain cutie. I can send this as a gift to someone else. And it's just like a different way to think about the market because with gaming, you're always competing against the same type of people. You're trying to acquire the same type of users, but with blockchain gaming, you have access to all these different people that you normally wouldn't. So collectors, females, kids, all of these people who wouldn't normally play traditional games. And then you still can capture people who play games normally anyway if you're building, say, like a first-person shooter or something like that. So you can also create value for subsequent games because you can take your NFT and port it to a different game. you can do a few different things with this. So if you have an NFT in a game right now and you launch a new game, you could say, oh, maybe you can use that NFT in the new game. Or you could say, hey, if you have an NFT in this game, you maybe get a special NFT in the next game. And we actually see this with CryptoKitties and Gods Unchained. So they did a special promotion where if you had a CryptoKitty, you actually could get a special card in Gods Unchained. And so you have the ability to do a lot of these cross-promotional or cross-publishing opportunities that you don't really right now. So it's very supportive for the ecosystem because you can work with other game developers to provide value across multiple games. And you can't really do that right now. And then this one is really interesting. If we think about the sharing economy, one of the most exciting things that came out of that was this creation of new jobs. Airbnb hosts could become professional hosts, Uber drivers could become professional drivers. And I think with the launch of blockchain gaming and NFTs, we're going to start to see a lot more professional gamers. People who play a lot of the games, maybe they're really good, they collect these NFTs, and then they start to sell them on the market. And with CryptoKitties and blockchain cuties a little bit, we actually have people who were doing this professionally. So some of them made quite a lot of money just from breeding cats because it was so in demand. You could literally buy a cat for $10 today, breed it, and tomorrow it's worth $50. So I think this kind of thing will become more and more popular as the blockchain gaming industry matures. Any questions about this? Yeah.
Sorry, because I don't have many confidence with not fungible tokens.
No,
NFT.
okay.
Then, which is the difference between a utility token and an NFT?
Sorry, a which token?
Utility token.
Oh, yeah. So they're quite different. So with respect to this talk, when I talk about NFTs, I'm talking specifically about in-game items, but NFT could refer to more of a broader category. So non-fungible tokens could apply to anything that's basically not like a one-to-one exchange.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking specifically about gaming NFTs. The NFTs that are not within games haven't really matured yet, so we haven't really seen a lot of that. So the use case for NFTs that exist is really within games. In terms of utility tokens, they are generally cryptocurrencies, so not tokens, not all the time, but just generally. And then they're used to interact on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
So with the NFTs, they're more for like representing in-app or in-game digital assets that have some kind of value that you might want to trade or basically collect. But then the utility tokens actually allow you to do something on a blockchain. So an example would be.
Then it's gonna help me to give you the proof of paternity, of ownership.
The NFT will.
Yeah, it's like I'm buying a real asset.
Yes,
in the
exactly.
Real world.
Yeah, so it's a digital representation of value.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. It represents okay.
You actually
Something
own
that
that
I
item.
digitalize in a unique way. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And you said before that I can make it in diffs. Sorry for everybody.
No, go ahead.
I can make it in any type of blockchain, right? Before you said okay,
Some
not
blockchains.
Ethereum because it's a lot expensive for the gas or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you make this choice? I mean, is there any type of, because the blockchain today is here, tomorrow is not anymore there. What I'm saying is that is there any type of blockchain that is more I can say that as that is better for NFT in a gaming sector, in the gaming world?
So I would say the four that are probably the most well known are Ethereum, Tron, EOS, and Engine.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, does Engine have their own, or do they run on Ethereum? I think. Actually, I'm not sure. Engine might actually run on Ethereum. and build on top of it. But if you're building a blockchain game, some things that you want to consider are transaction speeds. So with EOS, the reason why a lot of developers like to build is that the transactions are very quick. And that's obviously a big benefit, depending on what your game is going to be like and how many transactions you think will happen. Another consideration is the developer support and resources. So with Ethereum, because they have a really strong developer community, that's one really big bonus that developers really like to build on Ethereum for. With, say for example, Tron, that is trying to go after a lot more game developers, they've said that they have a lot of support and that they'll make it easy for people who build on Ethereum to port over to Tron. So I think there's a lot of different considerations. In terms of which chain will be around, it's really tough to know.
Yeah. Because the point is that if I buy my digital asset, and then I don't know if it is in this case, okay, and then drastically the value of the cryptocurrency that is behind the blockchain is gonna drop down. My digital asset, the value of my digital asset is not depending to the value of but it's depending on the value of the market in my Dragons game.
Yeah, so they're not necessarily tied. So if Ethereum drops, for example, your NFT that's built on Ethereum won't necessarily drop. But I think if there's a reason why the price behind that cryptocurrency is dropping, like let's say, for example, they have lost all of their money, then it's probably unlikely that there's going to be continued support for those NFTs. This is all like so new, it's hard to say. That's the thing. Yeah.
The thing is that if you have an asset, it will never really disappear, so you will still be able to transact it a way or another. But today, I think what? Yeah, but today maybe one option when you want to develop a game is you can do it on EOS, Tron, or Ethereum, but try to pass by the Loom network, because by passing through the Loom network, you can actually they make it possible that you can change from Tron to EOS and from EOS to Ethereum. And they are sidechains, so you can actually build a game where you don't have to do a signature on top of every transaction that you do, which is the case if you would just build it on top of something else. Okay, the transaction is fast, but it will still take time and a little cost. So you can actually build it on, I think, on any, but just think of interesting ways of interacting with the game, like using Loom.
The other thing that is quite new that's starting to be developed is if you don't want to really build a blockchain game, but you just want to tokenize your in-game assets, they actually have APIs or SDKs that allow you to do this. So you don't need to have any knowledge of blockchain to do this. You just make an API call, it tokenizes it, and then you can use it in-game. So I think there's starting to be a lot more work done around trying to make it easy for game developers to tokenize in-game assets, even if they don't really want to build a blockchain game. So an example of this is Nova Token. There's a lot of companies now that are allowing you to mint tokens even if your game isn't on chain. So that's also something to consider. Yeah.
I wanted to add, if you create a game and you have an item in the game, if the game is running, then it does not matter if the blockchain is changing, because you have this for the user experience. It's the same, I would say. So the user wants to play the game, so therefore the item is valuable. But if the blockchain gets insecure, I would say, then probably people don't trust you anymore that you're really owning this item. And then you have maybe an issue.
I cannot understand the difference between in-blockchain app or digitalization of the
in-game asset. Yeah. So I think there's a few different ways that this could be thought of. One could be that if it's all on chain, then you're a blockchain. It depends on which aspects that you're putting on chain. versus you're only taking specific items and tokenizing that. I think the whole ethos behind blockchain gaming is to make it decentralized and to have traceability and ownership, right? So I think the lines are kind of being blurred between what is considered a blockchain game versus something that's more just tokenizing an asset, because most blockchain games are not really decentralized anyway because they're not all completely on-chain.
Okay, example, the user login is my website. I decide if you can buy something or not, and anything is going to be done on the chain. I mean, the purchase, the asset is going to be done on that.
Yeah, you as a game developer can decide. Sorry, did you have a comment?
You already answered.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Okay, so things to consider when you're building a decentralized game. So this is something that doesn't really happen a ton in traditional games, which I think is a mistake. For us specifically, onboarding has been really, really huge. And I think that in blockchain games specifically, it's even bigger because you have this learning curve that you have to teach people. So not only do you have to teach them how to use your game, but if there's a token aspect where they have to use a wallet, you have to train them on that. And what I don't really see is games that have an in-game wallet, but I think that that's what makes sense as a blockchain game, because if you are getting people to leave your app basically, then they might not come back, but you're also adding a friction point. Whereas if you have a wallet within your app, then it's really easy for them to transact in and out within the same game. And then the other thing is people who use blockchain games or apps, they come from all different places. So some people are really experienced and some people are very new. And so you have to think about, well, if someone's really new, what are the things that they might want to walk through? What are the steps that they need to know? What are the skills that we need to teach them to be able to use our app and to be able to use crypto versus someone who's a pro and they're like, I don't really need all these explanations. How do you build all these different onboardings so that they are engaged and they still want to keep using your app? So accessibility. With crypto games in particular, a lot of them require that you have to have tokens to start playing. But if I'm someone who is downloading a game, I don't even know if I want to play it yet. So you're making me buy a token for a game that I'm not even sure I want to play. So you're adding a ton of friction for a space that's already so new and so technical. If you are going to build an app, it makes sense to either make it free to play initially so that people don't need tokens, or if they do need tokens, then you give them free tokens so they can start playing with, so that you make it as easy as possible for that person to just get in and start playing. And if you look at traditional games, that's what they do, is they hook you by basically giving it free to play initially and then prompting you to buy in-game items. But you basically want to lower the friction as much as possible and the barriers to entry. So I think this kind of ties back to the onboarding. You want to make it so easy for someone to use your game that regardless of what experience they have in the crypto space, it's really easy for them to come in and play. And so if it does require tokens, then you should give them some initial amount of tokens so that they can start playing right away. Yeah?
I have a question. So when you talk about the security of your tokens, if you, for example, have a mobile game and people are buying stuff and then they lose their mobile, right? So they also, they don't know what a private key is or something, they lose their assets. But how do you make sure that they keep their private key without knowing they have a private key? So do you save that on the server of your company, of the game developer, and tell your users, or how do you manage that they don't lose their assets when they lose their phone, for example?
There's actually some really... Oh, yeah, sorry. So the question is, as a game developer, how do you make sure that if there is some kind of usage of tokens, that the user doesn't lose their private key or that they're not able to access those tokens somehow? And because of the UI and UX problems that exist in blockchain and crypto, there's a lot of companies that are working on basically creating what's called a multi-signature wallet. And so the idea is that you don't have to rely on just keeping your private key. You basically have a set of keys so that the game developer, the website can basically allow you to reset your password or your key using a variety of different methods. And that just makes it much easier for someone who's used to, clicking forget password to be able to recover their keys in their wallets. So Dapper is working on something like that. Dapper Labs is the creator of CryptoKitties. Their new browser wallet, which is a MetaMask competitor, they actually have a multi-sig. There's another company that does like an API/SDK access, and they're called Bitski. So if you're a developer, you can actually install Bitski's API wallet into your app, and that's a multi-sig as well. So there are a couple of companies that are working on this, which is pretty exciting because as a mainstream user, if you're like, oh, well, sorry, you lost your $100,000 in crypto, probably not going to be a good experience. So yeah, this is definitely like a really, really good move in the right direction.
But does the company have then access to your wallet?
No,
so
it's,
you
yeah.
need both parties to be...
Exactly, yeah. And there's other ways to recover it beyond just like your email. They basically set up different recovery. Yeah.
But if you don't have access to their system, you cannot log.
I don't know the specifics of how it works, but there's actually a bunch of different ways that you can recover it in a way that only you would be able to. Yeah, and they can't, like the company can't get access to your funds or your keys on their own because they need your part, like you're part of the keys to do that. Yeah. So in terms of driving engagement within your game, so something that I don't think a lot of blockchain games are doing, which traditional games do, is tracking metrics right from the beginning. So there's a lot of analytics tools out there that do this, and maybe a lot of games are thinking, oh, well, I'm so small, I don't really have that many users, and so it's not really important for me to track. But knowing which features drive engagement within your app is so, so important as a game because attrition by day 30 is 90%. So for a game, by day 30, you've lost 90% of your users. And think about how hard it is for you to acquire those users, and then you're going to lose them within a month. And so you're constantly on this hamster wheel trying to acquire more users as you're losing them. But if you know which features are driving engagement and adoption, then you can continue to focus on those features, and the ones that aren't, then you can get rid of them. And then something that's really central to games is this idea of a core loop. So I don't know if a lot of you guys are gamers here, but with games, there's basically one trigger that the game wants to get you to. And once you get to that action, you're basically engaged. So for us, for example, the trigger is that they have to make a trade. If they make a trade, they're basically like 4 times as likely to be retained. And so if you think about your game, what is that? Maybe for a CryptoKitty, it's breeding with another kitty to have an offspring that's really unique. So thinking about what action is it that drives that engagement? And if you have tracking from the beginning, then you'll know that because you can see, okay, well, based on this event or this trigger, people came back twice as much, or this didn't really do anything, so maybe that's something that we want to get rid of. And there's a lot of free analytics tools that you can use that are really, really good. So one that I would recommend is Amplitude. They're based in the US, but even if you have a mobile app, they are amazing in terms of tracking, and their free plan is very robust, so you don't ever really need to upgrade to the paid plan if you don't have the funds. And then finally, something that's really important to blockchain games is it fun? If you think about traditional games, they're really fun, they're really exciting, but I think people get so caught up in this idea that blockchain is so cool, and it's like the next big thing that they don't think about how to make it fun. So they put the blockchain first before the game. It's basically like a blockchain that has a game versus like, okay, it's actually a game that's fun, and then the blockchain enables something that's not able to be done normally right now, like the creation of NFTs. So thinking really about, is your game actually fun? Do people want to keep playing it? Especially right now because it's so early on that difficulty curve of learning it will mean that a lot of people are going to fall off unless it's fun and unless you build features that keep people coming back. Any questions? Yeah.
It's very easy. Can I, as a kid, buy this crypto money in the
You
game?
can, yeah.
Yeah.
So the beauty and probably the scary part is that crypto is accessible to anyone, so there's no age limit. If you wanted to sign up for a wallet, anyone can do it, and anyone can go on to OpenSea or Rarebits, like the secondary marketplaces, and buy NFTs. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
So that's probably something you would want to think of as a game developer is, you know, is there anything within your game that you might want to think about limiting access to? As a game, probably not, but right now it's still early on, so there's no real regulations or controls in place the way that there are with traditional games, but that might change as the industry matures.
Yeah, so there was this decision that loot boxes are not allowed. So there's some regulation coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know also how non-fungible tokens are dealt with regulation. Is it, I don't know what it is.
But the exchange of digital assets, okay, between two users is gonna be done by a smart contract.
Yeah. So
Okay.
what happens is if I want to send an NFT to you, I get your wallet address, and it has to be a wallet that's compatible with NFTs. It has to have a Web3 browser so you can actually see the NFT. Otherwise, if you just use a regular, like, I don't know, Binance account, for example, you wouldn't really be able to actually see the NFT. So some examples of Web3 wallets are like Trust Wallet, Dapper, MetaMask. Those are all ones that you can use. Trust Wallet, or what was the other one? There's a couple of them. Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Any more questions? And
Okay,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much. I quickly check this pizza and then. Okay, pizza is still on the way. I don't know. So we have a short talk, 15, 20 minutes. We do a break and then it's your turn. Yeah? Okay.
Should I do it now or?
Yes.
Yeah?
I will say.
Okay. I'm just gonna take a glass of water, if you don't mind.
Get it for you?
Yeah, great. Still water. All right. Okay. Je crois bien. Do you hear me? Yes. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm gonna move a bit because I like to move. My voice is a bit. I went to a festival this weekend, so. All right. So on the program, I will probably say a lot of things that Cynthia already says, so I will just go through them pretty fast. But amazing talk. Thank you very much. And I love the platform that you guys are building. Just for the information. All right, so I'll talk about who I am. I'll talk about what excites me about NFTs. I'll talk about the big challenges in NFTs, in my opinion. My personal experience with NFTs, and I'll talk about CryptoPic, which is a game I'm currently developing. So, who am I? I'm a gamer. Yeah, I've been playing games my whole life, and two of my favorite games were World of Warcraft and RuneScape. What is good about both of these games is that you can actually exchange digital assets. So I can sell my sword to another player, or I can buy potions from another player, and so on. And why am I saying this is because what I love to do in these games, together with my partner in crime, which is Kata, is that we used to do marchanting. So it's you buy items to sell them for more expensive price. So if you knew that an update was coming, you would buy potions that people would need to do this update, and you would sell them at a higher price. And so we would make money out of this and get rich in game, which is cool. But it got to a point where we were actually selling this in-game money for real money, so for euros. And as a student, it was pretty nice because we had some extra money to go out. And the second thing is that I got introduced to crypto purely as an investor. So I wanted to invest in something that in times of war or in a next financial crisis could be a good edge. So I was thinking about gold, but yeah, gold is a bit old. So I thought about gold 2.0, and Quinton introduced me to Bitcoin, and quite fast we were like, okay, let's do it. And for us it was different than for like 99% of the people, because most people, when you explain Bitcoin to them, they are like, oh, but there is nothing physical backing it up. How can this have any value? For us, it was just the same as the digital assets in the game, but for the real life. So it was like, oh, this is nice. And before investing in Bitcoin, we wanted to understand what blockchain technology was. So we did that, and we discovered a lot of other projects like Ethereum, Augur, and other. And we invested in those. And we quickly created the Crypto Club, which was a way to gather people who were also interested in investing into cryptocurrencies. This is back in 2015, so it was not the hype yet. It was the beautiful times where you can get free money, actually. And the next step was that we saw these people that we were gathering, and they were not only speculating anymore, but they were also talking about the technology and what could be done with it. And some synergies were being created, and so we decided to create a community which is called Hive Blockchain Society, which gathers and organizes events to bring everyone that is interested or doing something with blockchain in Belgium. And last, I'm an entrepreneur, or I like to think that of myself, and I'm currently working on CryptoPic, but I'll talk about it later. I'm not a technical guy, so if you have technical questions, I'm not the guy you should ask them to, but I'm sure that someone can answer them. This is not financial advice. I always have to state that. This is purely my opinion, so it's what I've discovered by talking to people, by testing stuff out, and it's purely my opinion. And I am not corporate. What do I mean by this is that, of course, there are use cases for blockchain in the corporate world. Actually, one of the biggest use case is how you call it, supply chain. And supply chain are NFTs, in fact, so it's pretty funny. But I don't find it any exciting. It's not something that is trying to revolutionize the world, to change really things. It's just doing the same, but with another technology. Okay, so what excites me about NFTs? Well, the ownership. This is just gonna be a lot of repeat of what Cynthia said, but I'm gonna go quickly. So I love the fact that you can prove that something is yours, and that I can do whatever I want with it. Because in a lot of games today, because Cynthia said that you can trade a lot of skins in games already today, but in majority of them you can actually not really do it. Like Fortnite, you cannot do it unless, like you said, you sell your account. But in most games, they keep the ownership of what you have as a skin, and you cannot trade them. So the fact that you can own them and do whatever you want with it is something that really excites me. Then there is the transparency. Here I'm more talking about, like we said, like the trading cards, like Magic the Gathering or whatever, or Pokemon cards. Well, the thing is that you can never be sure that it's a real card. I used to actually scam people at my school when I was a young kid. I knew someone who had a print shop, and I was printing fake Pokemon cards with, like, you know, the glowing ones, because they were worth a lot of money. And I would just go there, hey, I can trade you this one for 20 of those simple ones. And I'm like, okay. Yep. Well, with blockchain trading cards, it's not possible anymore. You can be sure that's a real one and that it's not a fake one. You can actually also know how many exist, which is also quite important to determine the value that something could have. Because on Hearthstone, well, you cannot trade them, but on cards where you can, on games where you can trade them and you're not using blockchain, there could be so many of these cards, and so they are not really rare. Here you can check on the rarity. And which is also quite interesting is the track history. So you can see from who to who this NFT went, and actually also at what price it was sold, which is pretty cool. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they just decide how many will exist. They say like up front, they say like only 10 of these will exist, and 100 of these will exist. And so the one where only 10 exist, people will be like, oh, this one is rare, so value should be higher. Yeah. So you could actually track that at some point maybe a sword went into Obama's hand in a game, and then you could buy it. Well, that sword, even if there are thousands of them, knowing that Obama used it, will go make the price go up. The programmable, so like a lot of people like to say that Bitcoin is programmable money. Well, NFTs are actually programmable assets. So you can do anything. You can use these kitties that we talked about the whole time, and I can create a game where you can just say like the kitty with this specific attribute wins over this other kitty and it kills it. So I can just make up any game and people can start using it with their assets. What? Well, you can transform the game. The kitty. That's a bit more difficult because you are then trying to transform really the asset, but it should be doable if, well, you mix it up with another asset. But I haven't transformed any of my assets in that way, but maybe it's doable. And so also the interoperability, so it's the fact that different games, like Cynthia said, can actually use them, cross-use them, make both of them use them. Then there is the big challenges, because this all sounds really cool and nice. So there are the challenges for the players, which is me. So the user friendliness, which we already talked about. But it's really, because I've tested a lot of these games and I just cannot imagine any normal person doing what you have to do to play these games. You cannot imagine that every click in a game costs that you have to open MetaMask, sign the transaction, give some money, see, is it going? Okay, cool. So user friendliness needs to be changed. Fun, like Cynthia said, it's really, really important because the games that are being developed today, I mean, why I don't play them is just because they're not fun. The games I play, I like to play them. So they are not just CCC, so it's collectible card games or trading card games. So if it's just a digital asset that represents a card, it's like, okay, you can keep them, but there's nothing fun about that. So if you add some awesome gameplay like Gods Unleashed or like Zombie Battlegrounds back in the days, but now it's called Relentless. It's the same as Hearthstone, but just with cards on a blockchain. And then there is the importance, because people don't care actually about NFTs. I mean, 99.99% of all the gamers in the world, they don't even know what an NFT is. So me, standing here, I'm a gamer and I love, I'm addicted to crypto. I'm like, NFTs, oh, it's nice. But most people you call NFT, what is that? And all these people don't actually care. They just pay for skins today and they don't care about what it could bring to them. So if they don't see any importance in it, they will never care and they will never see any value in it. Now, for the game makers, the big challenges, of course, there are technical difficulties because, yeah, it's a new thing, so it's harder to develop. Developing a game not using blockchain, I mean, games have been developed for a long time, so it's quite easy. Here you have some new barriers that you need to find solutions to. There is no quick bug fixes. I mean, if you deployed your thing and it's live, you cannot just do a rewind and change everything back up. So if there is a big fuckery, you cannot do a rollback. But rollbacks in huge games are sometimes really important and necessary. And then, well, Cynthia already talked about it, but the business model is changing a working model for, I'm talking about the big companies that exist today. They don't want to change the model because their model is just epic. It's you make a free game, you sell skins, and you make a lot of money. It's quite easy, right? Why would you want to change this? So the only way this can change is by having some new studios making new games that are really epic games and fun games, and that a lot of people start playing them, and that they start seeing the added value of non-fungible tokens in these games, and that it becomes a new standard. So it can only happen, in my opinion, by the players demanding it, because it's normal in the new games of today to have NFTs. And then these big studios will have to adapt, and they will do it. And of course, they can make a business model that is not just selling skins like this, but you can take a transaction fee on every NFT. So it means that even if someone would sell back the skin that you sold to them, you still make money on every transaction. My personal experience, I started with CryptoKitties like most, because it was the first dApp. It was really fun. No, it was like clicking every click was $5. So nice about Sorare is that they actually have trading cards of football players. I'm talking football like this, huh? Not okay. And I'm not a football fan, but what is cool about these cards is that there is something more than just being trading cards. These cards actually interact with the real prestation, how you say it? The real performance of the players, how they do in real life. So if I buy a card of a player, I need 5 of them to create a team, and I put them in a match, and based on how these players did this week in the real world, I get a score and I can win a tournament. It's pretty epic. So they have an official partnership with the Premier League, I think it's called in Belgium. If you guys want to, we have set up a deal with them, so if you can go to sorare.cryptopic.net, I will try to send. Can we send it to everyone after the? Well, we'll send it afterwards. But if you go to our referral link, you will actually be sent a free card when you have made your account. We're the first one that can offer it.
Do they use an oracle to get that information?
It's a good question. It's a good question to which I don't have an answer, but it's a really good question actually. An oracle, does everyone know what this means? Oracle is a way to actually check if the data is, well, it's to check the data. I mean, how can we be sure that this player played well in real life this week? So it needs to be checked by an oracle to be fed to the smart contract so that the smart contract knows.
Oracle database.
No, an oracle refers to like a true data source that you refer to.
Okay.
To verify
It's the data check, so it's the guy that checks the data. Okay, so we will send the mail afterwards, but they're really cool guys. Then about CryptoPick. So CryptoPick, what is it? A fun and simple trading tool. So I've been trading for a while, and I've created myself some messenger groups where a lot of people came in. I've joined a lot of Telegram groups, a lot of Discord groups, and we saw the same thing happens every time. It's actually the more people join, the more cheeky it becomes. And you don't know why, but it's just the more people, and then it's like there's nothing more to do here. But it's quite easy to understand because it's like 95% of the people who are there, they're just there to get information. They're like, when I'm gonna get some useful information. And the 5% who talk, they're not there to feed this information to the players, to the other people that are waiting information. They are there to talk about real life. They're there to troll. They're there to talk about a lot of stuff, but they're not there to give the information that the others want. And what is also interesting is that from the 95% people who don't say anything, at least 50% has an interesting opinion that they could share with the others about what they think is to happen first. And so this was a way that we thought of how can we cheat the system or make a game that does this so that people actually get the information that they're looking for. So basically it's a very simple trading tool where you get instant access to the information that you're looking for without losing a lot of times on Twitter, Telegram, and other stuff. How does it work? Well, it's quite simple. So it's a market prediction game where you can discover what other people think will go up or down. So if once you have played, you will see something like this. So you can see the leaderboard, and it's of today actually. So you can see 23 people did a prediction today, and Crypto God is at the moment, well, I don't know if it's still now, but he did the best prediction because it went 40% up since the moment he did this prediction. Here I see the trending coins, so it's the coins that people think the most, well, just that, like 3 people thought that Bitcoin would go up, 2 people thought that Ethereum would go up. But there is a catch. The catch is that for you to be able to see this information, you first need to make your own prediction. And on top of making a prediction, you also need to make a bet. At midnight, you choose it, you can put a message of why you think it will go up or not. Then you share it, but it costs piggies. Piggies is not a cryptocurrency, it's just a digital asset like normal games. We don't want the hassle of making a cryptocurrency in the game. But once you have shared this, you get access to what we've seen previously. And at the end of the day, just like a poker tournament, the 5 best players win their piece of the pie. And this happens on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. If we have a lot of users, we will probably add on an hourly basis, but now it's not really necessary. We've started the project in January. We have done an alpha. We are currently closing the closed beta testing. We have more than 50 active users, which is not bad. And we are preparing to launch the open beta. But for you, for those that are interested, you can already join the closed beta by going to vip.cryptopic.net. And instead of me explaining what it does, it would be a good test to just test it out and see if you understand how it works. So thank you very much for your attention. Any questions?
We have the question.
Yeah. Yes.
thought they arrived, but you wait. Maybe everyone stands up and we would easier talking. Yeah,
Hey, zomaatje. Het is lang geleden.
You've been busy?
Yeah, making a big baby.
Aan nog steeds?
Ja?
Ik heb hem nog niet getest.
We zijn nu nog aan het testen, maar ik denk dat dat wordt ook gewoon tijdens de testing gewoon. Hier ben ik niet meer geweest.
Ze hebben wel gewerkt uitzien, hè?